Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shauna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Playbook for Performance podcast. I'm Shauna Corden. I'm really glad to have your listening ears. This month we're talking about spring cleaning your work relationships in the context of a new dialogue. And this is a new book that I'm working on talking about the increasing polarization of our society and how people are creating smaller and smaller cliques of certainty and how we need to break out of that and have a little bit more variety. And so I'm playing with this concept of polarization, and I'd love to hear your feedback. I've got two sort of headliner titles that I'm thinking of working with, like harmony in terms of coming back together and having complementary voices, or reunited, building those connections back from where they were and overcoming those differences. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that. But either way, we really do need you to contribute to our research. So there's a link down below to participate in the research. We'd love to hear your comments. But back to today's topic. Today, we're really talking about this idea of spring cleaning your relationships. And part two of this is to get clear about what you want. So last week, we talked about removing those toxins from our environment. And in this case, we're getting clear about what you want. So Marie Kondo style, think about all of the things that you do in your life, either your work, your home, etc., and Marie style, you'd set it all in one place so you could see it all. You'd touch it and you'd say, what brings me joy? Well, we want to do that same thing in terms of our work and our work relationships and what we want out of those relationships. So last week I touched on some of those qualities that are so important to me in my relationships, feeling like I'm growing, I'm learning, it's uplifting, it's positive, all of those things. But I invited you to do your own sharing. And one of the things that I got back was this whole idea of I'm confused about what to do. I've got some return to office, some return to, stay at home and continue to work. And I can't figure out how to get my cadence or my rhythm. And one of the things that I personally practice is a day of the week where I have no meetings. And sometimes it's very difficult for me to stick to my guns on that. I'm a member of a couple different task forces, and the days that I take off from meetings, I actually take 2 days off from meetings, are very popular days for people to meet. But I have stuck to my guns. That's part of my time to work on my book. It's part of my self-care, all of that. And so I would think about what would you do with 1 day a week that had no meetings? Would you practice self-care? Would you work on a more longer-term project that had greater meaning and purpose for you? Would you have more distinct chunks of time? We often refer to this as time mapping, where you have set aside time to do that particular kind of task, not necessarily for a particular appointment, but for that kind of task, whether it's meeting with clients, whether it's working on a project, etc. So what I really want to encourage people to do this week is think about what they want more of, and in contrast, what they want less of. So if you think about what you want more of, think about over 2021, what were the projects that really got you excited? Who were the people that you worked with who really boosted your learning, challenged you, made things fun? Again, these are my words. These are things that are important to me. It might be something different for you. But thinking about those things, what is it that you want more of? And I think whenever we put something under the microscope like that, it also challenges the rest of our standards to say, do I need to re-examine these other principles? For example, if we talked about that idea of having a day or maybe 2 days a week where you have no meetings, does it force you to challenge yourself to look at all the other meetings you're taking on those other 3 days of the week and really make sure that they're valuable, that you need to be there, that you can't send a representative, that you can't just get the notes? Is it a decision-making meeting? What's going on? So that's a little bit more about that. But when I first started coaching, and I was interviewing coaches, actually it was before I started coaching, when I was interviewing my first coaches, I interviewed 5 people under consideration. What was it that I thought was the best fit for me? And during that time, and I don't think this was a coach that I actually interviewed, but I learned about this coach that worked 4 days a week, 3 weeks a month, 11 months a year. And I was like, wow, that's for me. But at the time, I did not think that was possible. I just was like, oh, that's a pipe dream. Well, I have organized my life to be that way now. And it's something that took me a long time to get to that point to do it, but it's something that I admired, and it was something that I wanted to work towards. And so when it comes to what you want more of, is there some sort of pipe dream suggestion out there or model for you that would be important for you that you would want to work towards? You might not be able to get to all of it in 2022, but you might be able to take a step towards that, including 1 day a week without meetings. So if there are qualities of people that you really admire, or maybe you have a colleague that you have a slight bit of positive envy for in the way that they have set up their work life. Another example of this for me in terms of what I really want is one of my colleagues, when I was looking at her standard services agreement, she had some requirements in terms of her travel and lodging that I had never thought to ask for. I wanted those things, but I never just said, this is the way I operate. And I was challenged on that before I first implemented it. I cringed, to be honest, when I followed through with it. But now I will never do anything less than that. So I'm delighted that I adopted some of those best practices. And so I would encourage you to do some window shopping of people whom you think are quite successful in their careers or people you admire. It could be parents, grandparents, people who are operating from a different set of expectations, where they have just made some decisions about how they operate that could be a model for you that you could draw from. So remember, what worked for you in the past isn't necessarily good for you now. You obviously, if you're growing, your standards should be growing along with you. So when I first started teaching personal foundations and I started teaching about standards, one of the things that I included, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, where I think Earth Day is every day for us. One of the things I included was that I always had a reusable water bottle. I wasn't going to buy single-use water bottles if at all possible. And I was going to bring my own shopping bags. I wasn't going to use new bags. And since that time, I think those were pretty no-brainer, easy things for me to do, although it required me to create a habit of keeping those things with me, etc. My town changed its plan, so it no longer offered plastic bags. And it actually started charging people if they wanted to use a paper bag. And I found that quite fascinating. So the whole town leveled up, not because of my standards, but that was a trend that was going on in my area that had a lot of support. And so now that's not enough for me. Now I need to move even higher, where I try to avoid single-use anything. And it does mean that I have to use more effort on some things. It means that I have to be more conscientious in my purchasing, and really be careful about things. So is there something like that in your practice, your business, your lifestyle that worked for you in the past, but now that you've grown, it's not going to work for you anymore? You really need to upgrade those standards. And it's a little bit like the Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there idea. You're going to have to upgrade. And often I'm working with leaders who have been promoted because they were the best in their field. Let's say they were an engineer or in the IT department or something like that. And now they've been promoted to that director role of that group. Well, their job is no longer to be the first among equals or be the best engineer. In fact, that would make them a terrible manager or a terrible leader. And so they need to change their skills and start looking at, instead of to engineers that they would admire, look to leaders that they admire. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. Window shop, window shop, window shop. What is it that you really admire? And you can pull pieces from different industries, examples, people you admire, etc. Now, it does take a bit to be ready for that. You know, you got to start small. We don't want to start with such a high expectation that we immediately fail and then we feel badly about ourselves and give up. We want to start with small chunks and work our way up with the intention of getting to that, you know, in my case, the 4 days a week, 3 weeks a month, 11 months a year. So your homework really this week is to think about, for your most fulfilling life, what is it that you want more of? What are the habits that are going to put you there? Whether it's greater health, greater energy, greater community that you hang out with. And what is getting in the way of that? What is your obstacle that you need to overcome? And often with my clients, what I find is it's themselves. It is the expectations that they are still operating with that are artificial, and that they need to overcome those. And so they need to keep in mind what the vision of that new work environment can be to really get clear about that. And then start operating as if it's already perfect. You know, Jack Canfield talks about this concept as act as if. You know, dress for the job that you want, not the job you have. Those are simple examples that demonstrate that. So I would say one of the biggest challenges that I see in my client base is this idea that people are settling for what I call the path of least resistance. They have been lazy in their thinking about what the possibilities could be, and they are not moving forward with action to design that life that they would really love, that work life they would really love, those relationships they would really love. And so I'm going to make an offer. The first couple people that show up in my scheduling tool, you know, you can get that from the website or the link below. You can schedule a free design session with me where we will walk through, tell me the story of, you know, your fantasy story, the Cinderella story of your perfect work life. What does that look like? And then we'll break it down on how to get there. And then you'll have a very clear list of actions that you can take to start living that new, beautiful work life. So each week in the news, I like to read the news and tell you about a leader that's succeeding and a leader that's failing, and use those as examples. And really what I'm seeing in the news are some stories about how people are being quite proactive to support the things that they want. And then there are some that are throwing good energy after bad. So I'm really seeing this in the stock market in terms of how things are performing. And I think leaders are being honest about revenue expectations and things like that. But they haven't been as quick on their feet as they really need to be and anticipate, see around corners. So in that transition of people moving back to offices, what are the things that are going to drop? And so some of the obvious performances in the market, that have been challenged are Peloton, Netflix. People are doing less working out at home. They're watching less because they're out on the move and they're engaging in things that are live and in person. And so we're seeing more activity at gyms go up. We're seeing more concert tickets. I mentioned that last week. So what is in your environment that you need to prepare for? And it might be hosting people in your home. It might be being around people in the workplace and refreshing your manners. I'm seeing a lot of people in the workplace who have forgotten that you don't cook fish in the microwave in the community kitchen. So keep an eye out for those things. First two people who book a session with the scheduling link below, you'll get a complimentary design session on how your work life can be so much more satisfying and rewarding for you by designing that life of what you really, really want, and get clear about it. So until next week, take good care.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shauna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shaunacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shauna Corden.